Salve and welcome back to Athenaeum Meysaloun. The first episode was an introduction to this space, and this one is where we begin to actually walk through it slowly. The topic of today was chosen with care, though I admit not entirely free from bias. This episode is about a kingdom that often appears in the margins of history but rarely at its center. The Kingdom of Numidia. Now, when we think about ancient history, we often imagine the big names first: the Roman Empire, the Han Dynasty in China, and the Achaemenid Empire. Empires that left behind monuments, knowledge, and text. But history is not shaped only by the largest powers. Sometimes it is shaped by what exists between them. Numidia emerged in North Africa around the 3rd century before Common Era. In a landscape that was not politically unified, it was formed from Amazigh tribes, mainly the Masili in the east and the Masisili in the west. Two groups, close in culture but divided in power. And for a long time, that division defined the region, until pressure from outside changed everything. Numidia did not develop in isolation. It developed in contact with Carthage and with Rome. Two civilizations that would eventually come into direct conflict in what we call now the Punic Wars, between 264 BCE and 146 BCE. And it is here that Numidia begins to take a clearer shape, not just as geography but as political identity. And at the center of this transformation stands one figure, Masinissa. Masinissa is often remembered as the first great king of Numidia, but that title alone does not fully explain him. He was not simply a ruler. He was someone constantly reading the direction of power. At first, Masinissa was aligned with Carthage. It was the natural position at the time because Carthage was closer, more immediate, and more familiar. But during the war between Carthage and Rome, something shifted. Masinissa made a decision that would define not only his life, but the fate of his whole kingdom. He changed sides. Not impulsively, but strategically. Because for Masinissa, survival was not only about loyalty, it was about timing. And in 202 BCE, at the Battle of Zama, his cavalry played a decisive role in Rome's victory over Carthage. After that moment, Numidia was no longer just a region between two empires. It had become a kingdom with influence. Masinissa ruled for decades after that, and during his reign, Numidia became more unified, more structured, more stable. It is often said that Numidia's strength was not in its cities, but in its movement. Its cavalry, in particular, became known across the Mediterranean world. It was fast, flexible, and difficult to predict. Where Rome relied on discipline, and Carthage on wealth and naval power, Numidia relied on something different: adaptability. And for a time, that was enough. But history rarely stays still. After Masinissa's death in 148 BCE, his son Meysaloun inherited the throne, but unity did not last. And another figure emerges, Jugurtha. Jugurtha is remembered differently, less as a builder and more as a challenger. He lived in a period where Rome's influence in North Africa was expanding, and he resisted it. This resistance led to what is known as the Jugurthine War, between 112 and 106 BCE. But Jugurtha's story is not only about war, it is also about perception. Ancient sources, particularly the Roman historian Sallust, record a famous idea attributed to Jugurtha: a city for sale and doomed to speedy destruction if it should find a buyer. He referred to Rome. It was not a literal claim, it was a reflection on corruption, but also on vulnerability, because even powerful systems have openings. And for a time, Jugurtha understood that system very well. He delayed decisions, he used alliances, he exploited divisions inside Rome itself. But Rome eventually adapted, and once it did, the balance collapsed. Jugurtha was captured in 106 BCE, brought to Rome, paraded around the city, and executed. And with him, Numidia's independence slowly faded. Not in a single collapse, but through absorption, through integration into a larger world that no longer left space for it to remain fully separate. And this is where Numidia becomes something more than just a historical kingdom. Because when you step back, you begin to see a pattern. Numidia was not destroyed in a dramatic moment. It was gradually redefined. And maybe that is what makes it important. Because Numidia was always a kingdom that existed between two forces greater than itself. Between Carthage and Rome, between independence and influence, and between survival and transformation. So the question is not only what Numidia was, but what it represents. A kingdom shaped by pressure, defined by movement, and ultimately absorbed by history. Because history is not only what survives loudly, it is also what survives quietly, inside everything that comes after it. And sometimes, what disappears is still shaping the world that replaced it. And that is where we will leave today's episode. This was part 1 of the series of Numidia. Thank you for listening to this second chapter of Athenaeum Meysaloun. If something in this story stayed with you, then the episode has already done its job. Until next time, listen to what's between the lines. This is Meysaloun, signing off from Athenaeum Meysaloun.